Good afternoon, folks. As you can see from the state of my machine and the title of this video, this is the long-awaited for reassembly video of the Chinese sewing machine here. As you guys can see, I already have the lower sewing arm already put back on there, and a few other things are on, but I didn't figure you guys would have any problems figuring out how to put all this stuff back together. One thing I will mention when you do put your sewing arm back on, to leave the 3 bolts underneath loose, and I'll explain why you want to do that towards the end when we get everything assembled back together. While we have the machine like this, I wanted to go over a few questions that I've gotten in the comments that are kind of hard to explain, so I wanted to share with you in video format. So we'll take the tripod over here to this section. Now, the reason I wanted to do a close-up of this before we started getting things put together was a lot of people have been asking me about the correct timing on the sewing machine. And while I don't have anything I can tell you in written form of how to do it, I figured I could just show you mine, because mine is currently working the way that it should. So I figured if I show you how mine's set up, maybe you can mimic yours in the same way, and it'll eliminate any timing issues that you might have. As you guys can see, there is a mark on my 2 cams right here, and I suggest you guys do that if your machine is properly timed, to go ahead and mark that, so if you ever do take apart this section, you can know how to get things back together again. So I'm going to take the hand crank here, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in position on the front. Now, I'm not going to put the screw and the lock washer on it at this point. I'm just going to kind of set it into place like this. Now, why this is important here is because hopefully I can show you with the orientation of the handle on the hand crank and how the gears are aligned, that might fix the timing issue that you have. So if we're kind of looking on the front of at the front of the machine, the handle here is at the 3 o'clock position, and the cams are as shown here. The cam that's closest to the frame is kind of centered, I guess you would say, or even in this position, and then the second cam here, you just line this Allen screw with this one, and everything should be in proper alignment. Once again, I'm sorry if that doesn't help you guys out. I just figured that I'd just kind of show you what it looks like on my machine with the timing set up properly. Another thing, if you did disassemble this and you want to figure out the spacing here, because if you don't figure out the correct spacing, you can get a lot of this wobbling action going on when you're sewing, and you don't want that. So a way to figure out the spacing, if these are loose and you haven't tightened them up yet, is to put the hand crank on there. Make sure that the hand crank is sitting right up to the frame here. And with this hand here, basically I'm just pulling pressure on the thread, so that way this shaft here is in its furthest position over. And then at that point, you can adjust your cams here. Now on this cam here, there's an actual bushing that sticks out from the cam, and that's the position you want it in, because there's a bushing on one side, or it's kind of like built into the cam. I don't know what you would call it. A spacer maybe. And then on the opposite side, it doesn't have that, so that way these 2 cams can line up next to each other. So with your shaft pushed all the way up and you're holding tension here, acting like your flywheel's attached, you want to push this cam all the way over until it's touching the frame, and then that'll give you your proper spacing. So when this is all put on there with the nut and the washer, you don't have that back and forth movement. Alrighty, so that's all I wanted to share with you guys here for the timing and the spacing of all this right here. There is one more thing that I wanted to talk about. I'm really not going to be able to demonstrate it, but somebody asked me how to get the ball bearings that are pressed into the frame up front out. And how you do that is you'll take these cams and loosen the Allen key screws and just pull this shaft out. And then when you have that removed, what I do is I'll take a flat-headed screwdriver and a hammer and kind of catch the inside lip of the bearing over here. Now I'll take you to the front and kind of show you what I mean by the inside lip. Alrighty, so as you guys can see here, this is the frame right here, and then there's the lip of the outer part of the bearing. So from the opposite side with your screwdriver, you're going to kind of work in a circular motion around that lip, tapping each time with the hammer, and that should pop it right out. These are press fitted in there, so they can be a little tricky at times, but like I said, just slowly work in a circular motion around there, and it will eventually pop out. Alrighty, let's get reassembling the sewing machine here. So the first thing that we're going to want to work on is the sewing head up here. And the pieces to that is this top piece here that has the spring to operate the presser foot. We have this bar here that helps move the presser foot forward. Then we have the actual bar that holds the presser foot. See, what else do we have here? We have the bottom plate with the swivel tabs on there, and then the bottom, I'm sorry, this is the bottom plate that holds everything together, and then these are the swivel tabs that go on there, and then this is all held together by a couple nuts. So the most important part about putting together the sewing head is to get these two bars here in proper alignment when putting them back in here. So the first thing that I like to do is to take the presser foot and install it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the presser foot like this, and we're going to run it underneath the spring, and then you guys will see there's a cutout here on this bar. That's where that spring likes to sit into, is right there. So you can kind of see the orientation. We have the cutout here, and the presser foot is going this way. So the second thing we're going to want to put in is the bar that moves the presser foot back and forth. And what's important here is that we want this little cutout here at the top towards this side, and then this moving part towards the bottom side, towards where the presser foot is. So what we'll do is we'll insert the bar like so. And just to make sure that we have these two aligned properly, we can take our hand and pull these back, and it should look just like that right there. So the circular part of the arm is going to be sitting on top of here, and then the little rounded part that has the brazing on there will fit into this notch here and operate this up and down. So that's the proper placement of how those two should go together. So while holding some tension on here, because there is a spring in there, so we are meeting a little bit of resistance, but while holding it like such, we're going to go ahead and drop it in to the sewing head here and press it down in there. Now that we got that put into place, we are going to put the bottom plate on. And now this can be a bit tricky here, so I'm going to use both my hands. And what I'm doing is I'm using my thumb here to pull down on the presser foot and to also push back on the presser foot. And then with my top hand just kind of pushing down on the bars up here. So I'll switch hands so I can get the plate on there. Now the reason why I'm trying to bring this presser foot down, because it's kind of tapered along here, and that part that's tapered up towards the top is what fits into this notch. So you're going to have to kind of pull that down a fair way to get that to line up. And then what you want to do after that is kind of line up the two holes to go on the post. And then what I'm doing is I'm letting off tension with my thumb to allow that plate to come up. And then with my two fingers just kind of push it into place. Now at this point we can go ahead and put on the swivel bar here. But what I like to do before I do that is just to make sure that these are operating the way they should. And you guys can see that the presser foot's going down, but this one here isn't getting pushed down. And sometimes what you have to do is put a little bit of back pressure on this presser foot to allow those both to come down like you see here. So now that I see that those are going up and down and moving just fine, I'm going to go ahead and put the swivel bar or swivel plate into position. And I like to put mine like such. You can put it the other way as well. I don't think that really matters. Go ahead and put the nuts into place. Alrighty, so we got the swivel plate put back on there. You guys can see it moves freely, and these bars are moving up and down freely as well. So now we can move on to the next step, which is going to be installing the two arms. This one here, and this one here in the back. And I have a camera back here that I'm going to turn on, so that way you guys can see what's going on. But before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and tighten these up because everything is working the way it should. And if you guys are interested in what size the nuts are, this is a 10. So there we go. So we got that all ready to go. So I'm going to shut this camera off and meet you guys on the back of the machine. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and run two cameras at this point because I figured that will give you guys the best view of what's going on, because you want to see a little bit of overhead and up here when I'm fitting these two bars in, and then you're also going to want to see from behind. So let me get this camera turned on as well. There, that might help out a little bit. Alright, so we got both cameras rolling. Hopefully this will be pretty clear to you guys. Alrighty, so the first thing that I want to do is to take this piece here and put it into place. And so we got that where we want it. Now, you guys may not have seen, but I'm still putting the washers in between here, and that's just to help with a smooth on smooth surface. So that's a little correction from the other video that I put out. I thought because I actually reduced the surface area here that it didn't have as much friction, but I guess that doesn't work out when it comes to the equations of all that fun stuff. So anyhow, I still have the washers the way they are, and it just helps make things so much smoother. So we got this installed, and what we did is we kind of had to push down on the pressure foot bar here to make sure that the top of this circle here sits on top of that. So now we're going to go ahead and install this bar here, and this bar kind of gets snaked in behind this one, and you're going to have to move your pressure foot up in that position there, and then the gooseneck part of this kind of fits into this inner circle here, and that's what gets connected into this other bar up here. So what I like to do is, before we snake this in here, is to pull that back out and push up on that post that likes to keep hiding on us there. So we'll push it up about there. And what I like to do is to go ahead and take this part here and go ahead and fit it into that notch in that bar. Like I said, this part is the most finicky part when we're putting the whole shebang together. And I think the proper way to do that is, like I said, to try to line that up and kind of hold that into place. So that way, try to snake this around the other side, and there we go. So that was a little bit tricky there. So as you guys can see from this angle here, we have this round circular disc inside of that cutout, and if you guys can see from back here, we have it put into place. So now we're going to go ahead and put the nut to secure this top part, and the bolt and nut to secure this one. So we'll put that bolt in first, and we have the washer on the outside here. Hopefully that sound you heard wasn't me losing some parts to the sewing machine when I kind of jerk things around. Now, from this angle here up the front, you guys can see I put the nut on there as I'm screwing from this back side here. And so we'll screw those into place, and I believe that's a 10 as well. So we'll just give that a little snug there. I don't overly tighten these because you guys have probably done that before. It is very tight, and when you're sewing, it causes quite a bit of friction and rub. Now, I might have tightened it just a little too tight, but we can go back and fine tune those towards the end here. So the next thing we're going to do is take the lock nut, put it on this upper one here, and I believe this is a 1/2 inch. I don't have my wrench for the 1/2 inch, but I have this adjustable here, which works about the same when I have it properly adjusted. And we'll just go ahead and snug that down a little bit, making sure not to overdo it. Alright, so we're good. So we're still attached up top here. You can take your head and swing it around to make sure that everything's still working properly, and it is. So now what I like to do here is to go ahead and attach this spring here up to the top of that one, and I just take it and pull it up on there, and then we'll attach the 2 front springs up here as well. Now sometimes to help get these 2 front springs up, I'll take, you know, something like a screwdriver or something to help get me some tension to pull that up, or sometimes I can even just do it by pulling it up with my fingers. So let's give that a shot here, and we can kind of help with that, and put some pressure on here to help lower the bar down, and I was able to get that first one on there. Let's see if we can do the second one the same way. And so there we go, able to do that by hand. So we have the 2 springs here and the spring in the back hooked up. Our mechanisms here, are they working? Yep. So we are good to go with that. And like I said, that is the most trickiest part about the whole thing. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this camera off back here because that's all we needed to see from this back angle, and we'll go ahead and continue putting the front together. Alrighty, so the next thing we're going to go ahead and install is the second tension disc bracket with the leaper on there, and that's just simply putting into place here on your frame. Putting the screws back in the bottom here, and then the second one, you guys will see this has a little cutout so you can kind of move this plate at different angles. I usually leave it in the upright most position here. Alrighty, so we got the tension disc and the leaper installed. Next thing we're going to want to do is take our needle bar. There we go. Take our sewing arm here in the front, and before we put it onto the shaft up here, we're going to go ahead and work the top of this leaper here. Let me move you guys up a bit. We're going to go ahead and snake that around that loop there. Another thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and install that linkage at the top there, and then we'll go ahead and slide that on like so. So you guys can see, we move that back and forth. That's operating both the leaper up top and the needle driver like it should. Move our pressure foot out of the way, drop that back down there. And there we go. So we have this front sewing arm put back on there. And the next thing, we're going to put our hand crank on. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are familiar with this process. You have a little cutout here, and you want to make sure that that cutout goes onto this little screw. And what we'll do is we'll line that up here. And I'm going to move you guys because what I need to get is a view from this side here, so that way I can make sure that this goes in the right track, which is the outermost track, and the pitman rod ball bearing goes on to the inner track. So let's go around the side and take a peek. Alrighty, so now we're going to put our hand crank together, and what we're going to want to do is adjust these here to where that one's on the inner, and this one here is on the outer ring. Might have to pull that back a bit to let that go into place. Alright, push that back down. And there's a little bit of fiddling to get that into place, but you guys can see you just kind of rotate it and it'll get into where it needs to go. So you guys can see the hand crank is flush against the frame, and this outer sewing bar here is in the outer channel, and the pitman rod, which is down below, you really can't see, is on the inner channel here. One thing that I did change and make a correction in is I no longer put grease into these channels here, because I was told if you put the grease in there, the ball bearings that ride in here will get flat on one side because they're not actually rotating like they should, which makes sense to me. So I've stopped putting grease in these channels here. So what we'll do is I'll bring you over to the front. We'll put some nuts into place, and we will give this a couple cranks and see if we put everything back together the way it should have been. So I just hand tighten. I hand tighten a lot of things before I put the wrench on there, so that way I don't ever cross thread or strip anything. And once again, I'll take my handy dandy adjustable wrench here. And just snug it up a bit, just until that lock washer there goes flat against that surface. Alrighty. So now here is a real test to see if everything's working properly. So you want to make sure that the presser foot is down. So that way what we're doing is we're looking at the presser foot to see if it's going up and down, and also going towards the back to progress the material through. So we're going to look at that real quick as we give it up. One thing I did forgot to put the other lock nut on there. See, it's a good thing we do these checks. Now that's just hand tight, but that'll be good enough for demonstration purposes. So we'll go ahead and look. You guys look at that presser foot. See that? That is what you want to see. So there we go. We've just successfully put the machine back together. Everything's fine and dandy. At this point, go ahead and oil your machine, because you probably wiped a lot of that off or cleaned it off in the process of disassembling and reassembly. So I just put a little bit of oil on there before you start going to town, and then putting on the, putting your bobbin into place, your needle lug and your needle, and then you guys will be all set and good to go. Now I do have a video, how to install needles and thread the machines and all that, so I'm really not going to worry about putting that together, because I'm pretty sure you guys figure that out. Alrighty folks, before I get off into showing you guys the sewing head and how that looks with everything properly put into place, I wanted to talk about the sewing bar. So in the beginning of the video I mentioned if you guys did remove this from your machine, when you install it back on, you're going to want to leave the 3 bolts underneath it loose. And the reason why you're going to want to do that is so that you can properly align up the hole in this plate with your needle. The first time I disassembled my machine, I didn't properly line that up, and I went to go sew, and I ended up breaking my needle right in half because it was hitting the plate instead of the hole where it needed to be. So a good way to remedy that problem is to take your presser foot and put it in this position here. Go ahead and lower that down. We are going to move the hand crank until the needle's in its lowest position there, and then we're going to go ahead and tighten up those 3 bolts. So that way your needle will be lined up with the hole and everything will be good. Hopefully it'll save you guys a needle. So that's all I wanted to share with you guys on that part. So we'll lift the pressure foot back up so that way I can show you guys the proper alignment of those bars. So I know I went over that when we were putting the sewing head back together, but I wanted to show you how this disc here fits into that notch on that inner bar there. And that's important because if this is bent and it's not fully catching that lip there, or the brazing could be causing a problem as well. So let me rotate this around and get a bit lower, see if you guys can see what I'm talking about. So at this point here, where the gooseneck of this arm comes down and meets this disc, they're brazed together. And if you're having a problem with your sewing head not being able to rotate all the way around, that might be the culprit. Either the brazing needs to be filed off the backside to give you more clearance, or this needs to be adjusted. Now you guys can see that mine's kind of coming down at an angle like this. That is okay, but if it were to be a bit straighter, that would probably be the ideal. So just to let you know, there is a little bit of play with these machines, as rough as they are. But I wanted to share that with you. If you guys were having a problem with your presser foot not going up and down, it might not be due to the misalignment of these, but the actual disc not making contact there and causing issues. So I just wanted to share that with you. Another thing that I caught while editing this video is I had put this link on backwards. So I had this piece attached up here and the other way around. Now it did not mess with the function of the machine. It was still able to work properly, but it was a mistake that I caught in the video and I wanted to correct that. So this is the proper placement of the link between this outer arm and the needle driver. Alrighty folks, hopefully you guys got your sewing machine put back together, and if you guys had any issues with your timing or any wobbling actions, you were able to see how to remedy that in the video. If this video did help you out and get your machine go up and running, please let me know down in the comments down below. I enjoy getting comments like that to let me know that we're shooting the right videos that you guys want to see and enjoy. Thank you so much to all the new subscribers out there. I haven't been putting out videos here recently. I will explain that here in just a few minutes and also explain the cane here. But I want to thank you guys so much for all your support. I haven't been putting videos out here lately, and watching our channel just continue to grow is just amazing. So thank you guys so much for hitting that subscribe button down below. It really means the world to us. So a couple of subscribers have asked where I've been and why I haven't been putting out videos recently. And the short story of it is this year has just been horrible. And losses that we've had, loved ones that we've lost in the family, and with injuries that have been going on here as well. Early this spring, I suffered back injury building an incubator, and I getting ahead of myself here. I herniated 2 discs in my lower back. And then just recently in October, I was sent to the hospital for emergency back surgery because I ruptured one of those discs. And when I did, it sent bone fragmentation into my spinal column, and it was just completely horrible. So if you guys are interested in anything about my back surgeries or back surgeries in general, and you want to ask some questions and whatnot, let me know down in the comments below. That can be a separate video that I share with you guys, because there's a lot of stuff going on with that and still continuing with that. I'm hopefully going to be released off of home physical therapy coming up this week and be allowed to do outpatient therapy, which is going to be good because I've kind of been stuck in the house and it's getting to me. So that's probably a good thing for you guys, because I can shoot videos and share these with you. So once again, thank you guys so much for all your love and support. Also, I do want to remind you guys that I do offer one-on-one video chat to help you guys with your sewing machines. So if that is something that you're interested in and want to do, it will help show some support to our channel, and we really appreciate that. So I'll leave a link up here to that video where I talk about the services I offer towards the end of the video, and I will leave a link down below to our PayPal account if you guys want to show us some support that way, or you want to go ahead and pay for a one-on-one chat. So thank you guys again for tuning in. As always, take care and spend time with that family.